Okay, we're out here today. We finally have time to get our load that we covered in the last video. We're using the French guy's 2005 Gras bullet design. The mold was made by Cast Bullet Engineering down in Australia. We're using the 5574, I forget the powder, but the accurate powder, and we've just lubed the bullet with Lee A-locks, very heavy coating. So the main goal is to get our accuracy and try to see how we can control the leading problem that we ran into with the other bullet. And I'm going to run the test loads across the chronograph, and then later on at the end of the video we'll review the targets and the load data. First one looks about 1293. That one jumped up to about 1300. No signs of high pressure so far. Alright, that's our first 5. Alright, so far so good. And what I've noticed is using this heavier bullet, the sights are more on than they were with the other one. They were shooting way high. This is almost shooting point aim, maybe 2-3 inches high at 50 yards. So Jacques there designed this bullet and he knew what he was doing. I'm going to shoot my last string here, and the strange thing about this powder is you don't really see a big velocity jump between a half grain and a grain, and we're still keeping it around 1300, 13 and a half feet per second. But this is my max load. We're going to see what we get on this. And I'm getting 14 now. No signs of pressure. Okay, that's it for testing today. We'll go back, look at the targets, check the chronograph results. Okay, after developing our smokeless load with our cast bullets, the $1,000,000 question, do we get leading? So what I'm going to do is what I normally do, and yes, I'm going from the muzzle end clean, which everyone freaks out. Oh no, don't do it! I'm going to run a brass brush down here, and I'm using hops number 9. It's pretty adequate for that. And it's fairly tight fitting, not super tight, but tight enough. So we run that down. And on my cleaning rod I have an adapter because most of the stuff is black powder. So I got 2 jags. One's a 45 and one is a 44. So I put these black powder jags on there, get a patch, then apply the hops again and see if I can scrape the lead off. I can't remember which one I used last time, the 45 or the 44. It looks like the 45. Hey, maybe not. Don't want to go in. Well, kind of went sort of tight. Alrighty. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, leading. All them little shards of lead on there. See them? Let me open that up. I think you can see all. That's why I use that tight jag and knock that down there. But the lead seems to scrape right out of there. That's about the only good thing. I'm going to run a couple more of them down. Then I'll take a bore scope and look at it. But we did get leading. The only good thing is the leading broke free. Now I know this method may seem extreme to some people, but this is the second patch, and there's a big sliver of lead here, and there's less leading in there. So I'm just going to keep running patches down till I don't get any lead fragments on there. And kind of easier with each succession because you're clearing the lead out, but we did get leading in the barrel. So the Alex lube, I don't know, might not be working with this type of bullet, but maybe I'll run some patches down, get a bore scope and see what we got. Okay, running the Lyman bore scope down there, I can still see traces of leading here and there. It did clean a lot of it out, but I can see it in different points of the rifle. The leading is still there. Yeah, I can see it right there. So, even though I'm going to go over the chronograph results, and I'm going to see my velocity, and we'll look at the targets. I got to go get the information off, but there is leading. Fortunately, a lot of it came out, where when I leaded up my the gaunt barrel, it didn't. Of course, I wasn't using a jag that was real tight. It had to go down there. And again, this is a brass jag, and I did try running it up from the chamber and the patch got caught and it wouldn't go up. So it's got to be run down from the bore. And you know, it is brass, so it's not going to damage the barrel. The barrel's steel. But yeah, the leading is in there, and it's, you can see spots of it. You know, the bore isn't perfect. There's rough areas in it, and it just hits them little spots in there, or you get the blow by when it's soft. So this actually let it up a little more than the bullets that were heavily lubed. So, and also I was running this at a velocity of 1,400 some feet per second, which is a tad bit fast for a cast bullet in a rifle. We'll look at the results and discuss it more, the pros and cons of leading. But it looks like I may have to go, even with a smokeless load, with a paper patch bullet, a cast blank, and then paper patching the bullet, just so I won't get the leading. You know, it did come out, but it's in there, and you know, repeated firing, we're going to go shoot another 20-30 rounds. This stuff builds up if it doesn't come out. So in all honesty, I did get the leading, and the only other solution to that would be to run the same bullet, but much slower in velocity. Alright, now we're going to review our targets and our chronograph results. Now, the bullet weighs about 400 grains, and we were using accurate 5744 powder. Now, compared to the 350 grain Lyman bullet, which shot high, my 27 grain load, the first one I was aiming to the bottom, was at point aim. I was aiming at the bottom of the target. Got about a 3-inch spread on there, and the other two were down below the paper. So I kind of screwed it. It might be even a wider spread. But what we had, extreme spread of 21, standard deviation, high 1,314 feet per second, low 1,293, and average 1,303. So that's, you know, not terrible. So we go up to the next group. It's 27.5 grains of 5744. Now this grouping here, again, let me set the tape measure. And again, these are at 50 yards. This group is not bad. Extreme spread is 3 inches. But the very strange thing in the chronograph results is, if you look, I had 3 shots. This is the first time I ever had 3 of them at 1337, 3 of the 5. Okay, which ended up with high velocity of 1350, low velocity 1337, average velocity 1341, spread, extreme spread 13, standard deviation 6. Now this should probably be the most accurate load, but we went from 27.5 grains, now we went up to the 28 grain, and I'll get the tape measure over. Now that group, you know, tad bit tighter in some ways, but still an extreme spread of 3 inches as compared to our 27 grains. This is getting a little bit tighter here. You've got some bullets closer together. And our chronograph results are 1,374 high, 1,355 low, average 1,383, 19 extreme spread, standard deviation. And all the velocities are different. It's interesting that I had 3 of them had the same velocity on this last batch. Now what I did, because the brass is expensive, I didn't have a lot. I jumped from 28 grains right up to 29 grains. And as you see, the point of impact kind of is raising up a little. Like from here, if I drifted to the left, but they would have been in a triangle. All of these are over the triangle. So as the velocity increases, so does the point of impact raises up. This one had the tightest group of actually 2 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and there's a lot tighter group. We got a closer grouping, and the velocity on this 1416 high, 1388 low, 1402 average, extreme spread 28, standard deviation 12. Now the numbers are a little bit larger on this one, and the velocities are not quite close. Where that one, the 27.5 grain, I had 3, they were identical. So this is a better grouping, even though the chronograph info is showing it's got a higher deviation. But see the leading, another thing, now let's look at the leading. The leading kind of come out easy enough in the borescope. There's little bits in the nooks and crannies of the groove. I don't think it'll hurt nothing. If you look down the bore without the borescope, the bore looks clean, shiny, with no spots or obstructions. So there is some leading left, but a lot of the big stuff, as you've seen in the cleaning end, came out. I like this group with the high velocity, but looking at this, I may load 20 rounds with this 27.5 just for the fact that the velocity is almost identical, and see if maybe the lower velocity and everything else, because there's no need to match the 14, almost 1500 feet per second. There's leading. I'm going to see my next grouping. I'm just going to load 20 rounds of this. It's consistent, and see how it shoots. Maybe I got to get used to the gun. I did shift the rest from the first one to the second one, so it may be just a factor. This may be the load and the bullet, and maybe I can cut back on the leading. So that's what I'm going to kind of go with. So that wraps up our results for smokeless powder. If I get time, I'm going to do a black powder, and I'm going to use the Lyman 11 millimeter Mauser bullet mold. Even though it's smaller, hopefully the black powder will bump up the bullet into the groove diameter. And I got some made out of soft lead, so that's going to probably be the next spot we're going to go with this, with the Gras.